good to see you again. Crime insomniacs. Let's take a quiet walk together while we enjoy this disturbing story. And, as you can see, the subscriber count looks incredibly ugly. You know what to do, right? Just before 9 o'clock on the morning of February 1st, 2021, a lot of calls flooded into the emergency dispatch center in Plains Township, Pennsylvania. Neighbors living on West Bergh Street were reporting gunshots, and those calls came fast, one after another. People were yelling, and someone said they heard screaming followed by the sounds of gunfire. One man talked about being outside, shoveling snow with his dog when the shooting started. He hurried to get his dog inside and then called 911. Another neighbor said she heard the gunshots and quickly went to get her children away from the windows for safety. The police from Plains Township arrived quickly, reaching West Bergh Street in the Hudson section shortly after 9. The street was narrow enough barely for 2 cars to pass side by side, and thick snow covered everything. More than 2 feet had fallen overnight and kept coming through the early morning. Neighbors stood outside, holding shovels to clear their driveways. Some pointed down the street toward the scene, while others stayed back, too scared to approach. When the officers got there, they found 2 bodies lying in the snow. A woman lay right in the middle of the street, and a man was down on the ground between 2 parked cars near the front of a house. Both had been shot several times, and the blood soaked into the white snow around them. Nearby, a snow shovel was lying close to the woman's body. The officers checked to see if either was still alive, but there was no sign of life. The 2 dead people were James Goy, who was 50 years old, and his wife Lisa Goy, who was 48. The neighbors showed the police a house directly across the street, number 6 West Bergh Street. They said that's where the shooter went after the shooting. The house belonged to Jeffrey Spaide, a 47-year-old man who lived alone. The officers approached the front door carefully because they saw someone pacing back and forth inside through a window. As the police prepared to enter, they suddenly heard a single gunshot from inside the house. The sound was very clear, and the officers understood what it meant immediately. They went inside quickly and found Jeffrey Spaide dead, apparently from shooting himself with a 3rd rifle. His body was near the place where the neighbors had seen him walking just moments before. The rifle lay close to him on the floor. In less than an hour, the quiet street on West Bergh had turned into a crime scene with 3 dead people. Police put yellow tape around the area to keep people out, and forensic specialists from the Pennsylvania State Police arrived to collect evidence. The Luzerne County Coroner and the District Attorney's Office were also called to the scene. Large tarps covered the 2 bodies lying out in the street, while snow continued falling lightly. The Luzerne County First Assistant District Attorney, Sam Sangadolce, came to the scene and talked with the officers who had responded. It was already clear that there were 2 victims plus the shooter, making 3 dead in total in what looked like a murder-suicide. The investigation would need to work out all the details, but the basic story was unfolding. A dispute between neighbors had turned deadly, and the man who did the shooting killed 2 people before shooting himself as the police arrived. Plains Township Police Chief Dale Binker told reporters that normally West Bergh Street was very quiet and the police rarely had issues there. The neighbors agreed. One man who didn't want his name used said he was outside shoveling snow when the shots rang out. He remembered hearing screaming followed by 8 to 12 shots fired. Another neighbor said she heard gunfire from 2 different guns, which the police later confirmed. First, there was a series of shots that sounded like they came from a pistol. Then, more shots followed from a bigger gun. By midday, the police were well into their investigation. They interviewed people who had seen or heard parts of what happened, while the forensic team carefully documented the scene. They measured distances, took photographs, and gathered shell casings. Inside number 13 West Bergh Street, the home where James and Lisa Goy lived, a 15-year-old boy struggled to understand what had just occurred. He had been inside the house during the shooting and had heard the shots, but now police were telling him he would stay with his grandparents because both of his parents were dead. The bodies remained in the street for hours as the officers worked. The investigators needed to record everything exactly as it was found, how each body was positioned, where the snow shovel lay, blood patterns in the snow, and the shell casings scattered across the pavement. Every little detail counted for the investigation. As the day went on and more facts came out, the story became clearer. The whole tragedy had started over a dispute about shoveling snow, neighbors arguing about where they were throwing snow from their driveways. It seemed unbelievable, almost ridiculous, that something as small as a snow dispute could lead to 3 people dying. But that's exactly what happened on West Bergh Street that cold morning. What began as a simple argument ended with a double murder and a suicide. The night before, the snow started falling hard, and the Weather Channel called this storm Winter Storm Orlena. It was hitting the whole Northeast really badly. By the next morning, Plains Township was buried under more than 2 feet of snow, while some parts of Pennsylvania and New Jersey reported almost 3 feet. This storm was one of the worst to strike the area in years. Roads were blocked, flights got canceled, and schools closed. Governor Tom Wolf even declared a disaster emergency because of how bad it was. Around 8 o'clock that morning, Jeffrey Spaide stepped outside his house at number 6 West Bergh Street to start clearing snow from his driveway. His home was modest, with a driveway that sloped up from the street. He had to be at work by 9:45. Jeffrey worked as an environmental engineer manager for the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection, specifically with the Lackawanna River Basin Sewer Authority. Usually, his commute took about 45 minutes, but with all the snow piled up, it was going to take much longer that day. So his first priority was to clear that driveway. Just across the street at number 13, James and Lisa Goy were outside too. They were shoveling snow off their cars, which had been parked in front of their house and were now buried under the heavy snowfall from the night before. As they shoveled, they threw the snow across the narrow street onto Jeffrey Spaide's property. Jeffrey noticed this, stopped shoveling, and asked them to stop putting snow on his land. But James and Lisa kept shoveling and tossing snow over. Jeffrey asked again, and things quickly took a bad turn. A surveillance camera outside the Goys' home captured the argument as it heated up fast. James Goy got angry and started yelling threats across the street to Jeffrey Spaide. The video later caught exactly what he said. He shouted that he would knock his ass out and make Spaide's life a living hell living there, while calling him a dickhead. Jeffrey fired back with his own curse words, telling James to go fuck himself and calling him fucking scum. Lisa Goy jumped in as well, yelling at Jeffrey and calling him a fucking scumbag and telling him he didn't know how to talk to someone. James kept the verbal attacks going, calling Jeffrey a pussy over and over. At this point, James was standing in the middle of the narrow street, making obscene gestures, showing his middle finger, and Lisa made the same gesture. During this heated shouting match, James threw the tool he'd been using to clear snow from his car. It landed close to Jeffrey. Then James walked toward Jeffrey, his fist raised, ready to fight. The threat had gone physical now, so Jeffrey backed away and turned to walk up his driveway, heading back toward his house. But James and Lisa kept shouting insults and threats after him as he went inside. Jeffrey didn't stay inside for long, maybe less than a minute, before coming back out holding a handgun. He walked back down his driveway toward the street where the Goys were still standing. When James saw the gun, his tone shifted slightly, telling Jeffrey to put the gun down. But neither James nor Lisa moved back or tried to calm the situation. Instead, they kept shouting at him from the middle of the street. Lisa dared him, yelling, "Go ahead." Her voice was full of challenge and provocation. James kept making obscene gestures. Then Jeffrey raised the handgun and fired the first shot, which seemed to miss. The second shot also missed, so neither James nor Lisa reacted right away, apparently thinking he was just trying to scare them. Then the third shot hit James Goy, knocking him violently backward. He staggered toward his house, badly hurt. Jeffrey then aimed at Lisa and fired 2 shots into her torso. She fell hard to the ground in the middle of the street, injured and hurt. James, bleeding and wounded, tried to reach his front door and called out for help, shouting for someone to call the cops, his voice desperate. Jeffrey fired again, hitting James at least one more time, and James collapsed between two parked cars near his house's front. Lisa was still alive on the ground despite her wounds. She looked at Jeffrey, screaming curses at him. "You fucker!" Her voice was filled with shock and anger as she couldn't believe what was happening. Jeffrey then turned and went back inside his house. Neighbors who had been outside shoveling stared in horror. Some ran to help the injured, while others stood frozen, unable to take in what they had just seen. After about 30 seconds inside, Jeffrey came back out carrying a different weapon, an AR-15 style rifle, bigger than the handgun. He walked back to the street where James and Lisa lay struggling. Approaching Lisa first, he stood over her and said, "You should have kept your fucking mouth shut." Then he fired the rifle at close range, killing her instantly. Next, Jeffrey went toward James and fired at least one more round. James stopped moving. After that, Jeffrey crossed back to his house, went inside, and disappeared. Neighbors who witnessed the whole terrifying scene started calling 911 in a panic. Many calls flooded the emergency dispatch center as people screamed into their phones, reporting that multiple shots had been fired and that 2 people were down in the street. They added that the shooter had gone back inside his house across the street. From their windows, neighbors saw Jeffrey pacing inside number 6 West Bergh Street, moving back and forth in front of a window. He must have known what he had done and understood the police were getting closer because the sounds of emergency sirens were growing louder in the distance. Moments after the police arrived, a final gunshot rang out inside the house. Jeffrey Spaide had used a third rifle to shoot himself. When officers entered, they found him dead. In just about 2 minutes, an argument over shoveling snow spiraled into a nightmare. 2 people killed out in the street, with the shooter ending his own life. It happened so fast and so suddenly that the neighbors who witnessed it were left struggling to make sense of what they had just seen. James Joseph Goy Jr. came into the world on January 18, 1971, and Lisa Ann Goy was born a year later on March 4, 1972. They had been married for many years and called number 13 West Bergh Street in the Hudson section of Plains Township their home. Together, they had a son who was 15 years old by 2021. Their boy had autism, and the family spent a lot of time making sure he had the care and support he needed. Friends and family spoke of the Goys as regular people, living a simple, ordinary life in a neighborhood where people knew each other. They were active in their community and had friends and neighbors who cared about them. A photo on Facebook showed the couple standing behind their teenage son, all 3 smiling, like a picture of a happy, settled family. Their home was modest, on a working-class street where neighbors looked out for one another. Right across the street from them, at number 6 West Bergh Street, lived Jeffrey Allen Spaide. He was born on June 16, 1973, in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. He grew up nearby and had spent most of his life in that area. Unlike the Goys, he lived alone, never married, and without children. His family included his father, William, 2 sisters, Sharon and Jessica, a brother also named William, and several nieces and nephews. Jeffrey's life followed a very disciplined path. When he was 20 years old, back in September 1993, he joined the United States Navy. He trained at the Naval Station Great Lakes in Illinois and served on 2 ships during his active duty, the USS America and the USS Nassau. He also worked at duty stations in Hampton Roads, Virginia, and Panama City, Florida. His job was a shipboard engineering technician, specializing in damage control, focused on maintaining water systems and fire suppression equipment on Navy ships. During his 5 years of active duty, Jeffrey earned several medals and honors, including a Navy Achievement Medal, a Meritorious Unit Commendation, and 2 National Defense Service medals. He also received an Armed Forces Expeditionary Medal, a NATO Medal, and a Southwest Asia Service Medal with a Bronze Star. His active Navy service ended in May 1998, leaving with the rank of Damage Controlman 2nd Class. Outside of work, Jeffrey was devoted to fitness and enjoyed running marathons, often participating in long-distance running events. He was also close to his family, especially his nephew Jaden. People who knew him at work described him as professional and knowledgeable. The conflict between Jeffrey Spaide and the Goys didn't just appear suddenly, it had been growing for quite some time. Neighbors on West Bergh Street confirmed that these three had a history of disagreements and tension that had been brewing beneath the surface for months, maybe even longer. They had argued before, and the bad feelings between them had been simmering quietly. Back in December of 2020, roughly 2 months before the fatal shooting, another big snowstorm dumped almost 15 inches of snow on Plains Township. During that storm, a similar fight broke out between Spaide and the Goys over shoveling snow. The situation was much like what happened later in February. The Goys were clearing snow from their property and throwing it over the street onto Spaide's land, and Spaide objected. They got into a loud, heated argument with yelling and insults tossed back and forth. That December argument didn't get violent. No police were called, and no one filed a report or asked for official help. The whole matter stayed between the neighbors, unresolved. After it ended, each side went back inside their homes with no apologies or attempts to settle things. The anger stayed with them. Investigators looking into the case later found no legal records or court filings involving disputes between Spaide and the Goys. There were no restraining orders, no formal complaints to the authorities, nothing official to show there was a problem. To the law, their conflict did not exist. Instead, it was just a personal feud, the kind that happens when neighbors live too close and can't get along, but never involve the police. People who talked to investigators said that arguments between them often focused on the same issues. Snow removal was a constant problem, where the snow was thrown or piled, especially when one neighbor dumped it onto another neighbor's property. These might seem like small things to outsiders, but for the people involved, it mattered a lot. They felt disrespected, like their property was being treated with contempt. They believed the other person was deliberately inconsiderate. Besides snow, there were probably other reasons for friction. When people live that close, many little things can cause arguments. Noise, property lines, parking spots, or just daily habits that bother someone else. Even though not every disagreement between Spaide and the Goys was documented, it was clear their relationship had worsened over time. Plains Township Police Chief Dale Binker said the shooting on February 1st wasn't the first time these neighbors fought. Witnesses told the police there was a history of arguments, but the police had never been called or involved before. There were no complaints on record. To the police, West Bergh Street was quiet, but for those living there, it hadn't been quiet at all. Neighborhood disputes like this are dangerous because they happen in close quarters where people can't easily avoid each other. They see each other every day, and every time they go outside, they risk another fight. Small annoyances build up, and each slight gets remembered and added to a long list of problems. Bitterness grows and anger piles up. What may begin as minor irritation can turn into deep hatred over time. For Spaide and the Goys, that process had been going on for months. Every argument made things worse, and every insult pushed them further apart. Their relationship became poisoned over time. When February 1st, 2021 came around, things were tense and dangerous. Neither side wanted to back down or show any kindness. The bad feelings had become so strong that even the smallest problem could set off an explosion. The tragic part is that no one stepped in to stop things from getting worse. Nobody tried to mediate or called the police to help before violence happened. The neighbors may have known about the fights but didn't report anything. Maybe they thought it was normal bickering that would eventually fade, or they just didn't want to get involved. Or maybe they didn't realize how serious the situation had become. Whatever the reason, the feud between Spaide and the Goys was left to grow without any solution. The two families stayed trapped in their hostile relationship with no end in sight. The tension built up with no one to stop it. And when Winter Storm Orlena brought fresh, heavy snow to Plains Township in February, everything was set for disaster. All that was needed was one more argument, one more fight, one more moment where nobody was willing to back down. Within just a few hours after the shooting, investigators had gathered enough information to understand exactly what had happened. The evidence was strong and clear. Many witnesses had seen or heard parts of the argument and shooting, and physical proof at the scene backed up their stories. The most important piece was surveillance video from a camera outside the Goys' home, which recorded almost the entire event. This video showed Jeffrey Spaide walking down his driveway while the argument was going on, then James Goy throwing a snow removal tool. It captured James moving toward Jeffrey with his fist raised and Jeffrey backing into his house. The video also showed Jeffrey coming out again with a handgun and firing the first shots. After that, he went back inside and came back with a rifle. The footage recorded him shooting both victims in the street and captured their last moments. Investigators spoke to several neighbors who had been outside that morning, many shoveling snow when the fight started. They heard the yelling and swearing, and some actually saw the shooting, while others heard the gunfire and then saw what happened afterward. One neighbor estimated hearing between 8 and 12 gunshots fired, while another confirmed the shots came from 2 different guns, which matched the police's findings later. A forensic examination showed that 3 guns had been used during the incident. Jeffrey first used a handgun, firing several shots at James and Lisa Goy from a few feet away. Some bullets missed, but others hit. After wounding both, Jeffrey returned inside, dropped the handgun, picked up an AR-15 style rifle, and went back outside. He fired more rounds at the victims, who were already hurt, and killed them at close range. After killing the Goys, Jeffrey went back into his house one last time and got a 3rd rifle, which he used to shoot himself. This self-inflicted wound happened just as police were arriving. Officers heard the gunshot as they approached, and when they entered, they found Jeffrey dead in front of the window where neighbors had seen him pacing moments earlier. All the physical evidence lined up with what witnesses said and what the video showed. Police found between 15 and 20 shell casings scattered around the street and near Jeffrey's driveway, coming from different sized guns, confirming that more than one firearm had been used. The pattern of these casings also showed the specific places where Jeffrey fired during different parts of the attack. James and Lisa Goy's bodies were exactly where witnesses said they fell. Lisa was lying in the middle of West Bergh Street with a snow shovel nearby, proof of what she had been doing right when the fight started. James was found between 2 parked cars in front of his house, where he had been trying to reach his front door before being shot. Blood from both of them stained the snow dark red, stark against the white. Forensic experts found that both victims had been shot multiple times. Autopsies conducted by the Luzerne County Coroner's Office would later record the exact number and locations of the wounds. But it was clear from the start that both had been hit by bullets from the handgun and the rifle. Jeffrey had shot them first with the pistol, then returned with the rifle to finish them off. The rifle shots were unnecessary to kill them because they were already mortally wounded. It was an execution. Inside Jeffrey's house, investigators found all 3 weapons. The handgun and the AR-15 rifle used to kill the Goys were found close to where he had taken them. The 3rd rifle, which he used on himself, lay near his body. All 3 guns were collected and sent for ballistics testing. The results matched the bullets and casings found outside, proving that Jeffrey acted alone. There were no other shooters and no suspects besides him. The next day, February 2nd, District Attorney Stephanie Salavantis and Plains Township Police Chief Dale Binker made a joint statement confirming that Jeffrey Spaide, 47 years old, had killed James Goy, 50, and Lisa Goy, 48, before taking his own life. They officially called the case a murder-suicide and detailed what had happened based on witness statements and the surveillance video that showed the argument over snow, the threats, and the shootings. The district attorney's office worked through the night, examining evidence and talking to witnesses. By Tuesday afternoon, less than 30 hours after the shooting, they announced they had no reason to suspect anyone else. The case was straightforward. One man is the perpetrator, 2 victims, no others involved, and the investigation was closed. Several agencies played roles during the response and investigation. The Luzerne County District Attorney's Office led the legal side, while the County Coroner's Office took care of the body examinations. Plains Township Police handled the first response and secured the scene. The township's fire and ambulance services also responded. The Pennsylvania State Police Forensic Services Unit processed the evidence, taking photos, collecting shell casings, and documenting every detail. The investigation closed quickly because the facts were so clear. There was no mystery about who did the shooting. The man responsible was dead, the weapons were recovered, many witnesses saw what happened, and video captured the crime. There were no unanswered questions about what happened that morning. Only one question remained: why? Why did an argument over snow shoveling lead to murder? Winter Storm Orlena was more than just a typical snowstorm. It was a huge weather event that shut down much of the Northeast United States for several days. This storm started forming on Sunday, January 31st, 2021, and lasted through Wednesday, February 3rd. The heaviest snowfall happened on Monday, February 1st, which was the same day the shooting took place on West Bergh Street. The National Weather Service had warned many states about the storm, sending out winter storm warnings for places like Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, Rhode Island, and Massachusetts. Meteorologists predicted a lot of snow and dangerous weather conditions, urging people to stay home and avoid travel if they could. By Monday morning, these warnings were clearly true. Plains Township got buried under more than 2 feet of snow, with some nearby spots measuring over 30 inches. The snow started Sunday night and kept falling heavily through Monday morning. Roads quickly became impossible to drive on. Snowplows couldn't handle how fast the snow kept piling up. Major highways were shut down, and smaller streets like West Bergh Street were completely covered. The storm caused chaos all over Pennsylvania. In Philadelphia, more than 10 inches of snow fell. Allentown saw 15 inches. In the northeastern part of the state, where Plains Township sits, the snowfall was even worse. Areas near Scranton and Wilkes-Barre reported almost 3 feet of snow, making it one of the worst winter storms in the region in recent years. It wasn't just snow. The storm brought dangerously cold temperatures too, with the wind chill dropping below 0 in many places. The mix of heavy snow and biting cold made conditions deadly for anyone caught outside without shelter. Across several states, the storm caused multiple deaths. In Allentown, Pennsylvania, an 83-year-old woman with Alzheimer's disease wandered from her home during the storm and was found frozen to death in a snowy field. In New Jersey, several people died in car crashes caused by slippery, snow-covered roads. In New York City, at least 2 homeless people died because of the cold weather. Emergency services across the region were overwhelmed with calls for help. Governor Tom Wolf declared a disaster emergency for Pennsylvania. This allowed the state to use resources more easily to help clear snow and respond to emergencies. The Pennsylvania Emergency Management Agency worked with local authorities to keep roads open and make sure emergency help could reach those in need. Still, dangerous conditions lasted all through Monday and into Tuesday. Airlines canceled thousands of flights. Major airports like Newark Liberty International, John F. Kennedy International, and LaGuardia all stopped flights for hours. Philadelphia International Airport also faced big delays and cancellations. Passengers were stuck inside terminals or couldn't get to airports because roads were closed. Schools all over the region closed, businesses shut down, and government offices stopped working. Many communities told residents to stay indoors and wait for the storm to pass. Those who had to go outside faced the backbreaking work of digging out driveways and sidewalks buried under feet of snow. For people living on streets like West Bergh Street, the storm created an immediate challenge. Cars were trapped beneath the snow and driveways were blocked. Anyone needing to get to work or run important errands spent hours shoveling. The work was exhausting and the cold made it worse. People were stressed, impatient, and quick to anger. Everyone was dealing with the same overwhelming problem. In this situation, fights over where to put the snow were common. When you clear 2 or 3 feet of snow from your driveway, you have to put it somewhere. Homeowners might pile it on their lawns, push it to the side of the street, or sometimes toss it onto neighbors' properties. In neighborhoods with closely spaced houses, this often caused problems. What worked for one person became a problem for someone else. The storm created a pressure cooker feeling. Everyone was cold, tired, and stressed out. Because the snow kept falling, the work never ended. You could dig for hours, then look up to see new snow coming down. This made people feel hopeless, and patience ran low. Small annoyances felt like big attacks. Winter Storm Orlena caused at least a dozen deaths across the Northeast, mostly from traffic accidents and freezing cold. But on West Bergh Street in Plains Township, the storm led to 3 deaths in a very different way. The heavy snow brought Jeffrey Spaide and the Goys outside at the same time, gave them a reason to argue, and sparked the tension that had been growing for months into something deadly. Inside the Goy family home at 13 West Bergh Street, their 15-year-old son was left trying to make sense of what had just happened. He had been inside when the fighting started, hearing his parents yelling at someone outside. Then he heard gunshots, many shots. He heard his dad yelling for someone to call the police, then more shots, and finally, silence. When the police arrived and entered the house, they found the boy in shock. His parents were dead in the street outside. He hadn't seen the shooting happen, but he heard everything. The officers had to gently explain to him that his mother and father had been shot and killed by their neighbor, who was now dead too. The boy would have to live with his grandparents. He gathered a few belongings with officers standing by, then was taken away from the only home he had ever known. The boy's grandparents took him in immediately, and family members came together to support him through the trauma. One relative, Lisa Goy, posted on Facebook asking people not to share the surveillance video of the shooting. The video was already spreading online, being shared across social media. Chris called it horrifying and asked people to think about the family's pain. They were grieving and didn't need to relive James and Lisa's deaths again and again on the internet. Still, the video kept spreading. By Tuesday morning, it had been watched millions of times. People shared it, running the full range of reactions, from shock and horror to dark jokes. Some viewers felt sorry for the Goys, others blamed them for provoking Jeffrey Spaide, and some just saw the video as sensational content to get attention. It became one of the most widely shared pieces of graphic, violent footage in recent memory. A relative of the Goy family living in France, Jess Jimenez, spoke to the French media about the tragedy. She called the deaths heartbreaking and senseless, saying James and Lisa had been killed like cattle in the street over something so small. She talked about the 15-year-old boy who lost both parents and now had to live with the memory forever. She expressed anger that the dispute hadn't been solved before it reached such a terrible end. The community reaction was mixed and complicated. Neighbors on West Bergh Street were stunned. Tyler Fish, who lived nearby, said he had been out shoveling snow when he heard the gunshots and ran inside right away. He told reporters that West Bergh Street had always been peaceful, with people getting along. Violence like this was unimaginable so close to home. Other neighbors speaking to media said the same thing, that West Bergh Street was usually a quiet, friendly place where people helped each other and disputes were rare and solved quickly. None of them expected anything like this. The idea that an argument about snow could end in murder seemed unbelievable, but that's what happened. Plains Township Police Chief Dale Binker held a press conference on Tuesday. He called the shooting a tragedy that shocked everyone in the community. He said the police had no previous records of problems between Spaide and the Goys and had never been called to the street over disputes between them. He stressed that West Bergh Street had been quiet and peaceful before. He offered condolences to the families of all 3 people who died. District Attorney Stephanie Salavantis also spoke to the media, confirming the investigation was finished and the case was closed. She explained the sequence of events based on the video and witness statements. She said Spaide had shot the victims with a handgun first, then executed them with a rifle, and finally took his own life. She confirmed there were no other suspects and no further investigation. The case was legally resolved. 3 people dead, the shooter included. Reactions on social media were sharply divided. Some expressed sympathy for James and Lisa Goy, pointing out that no one deserves to die over an argument about snow. They emphasized Spaide's actions in escalating the fight by using firearms. Though the Goys could be rude or confrontational, many said that didn't justify killing them. They mourned the 15-year-old boy who lost both parents. Others saw things differently. Some commenters said Spaide had been bullied by the Goys and had finally lost control. They pointed to the obscene language and threatening gestures shown in the video. They noted James throwing an object and stepping towards Spaide with a raised fist. Some argued that Spaide might have felt genuinely threatened. Some even suggested the Goys brought this on themselves by provoking Spaide, especially when they kept taunting him after he showed a gun. This argument went on across social media for days. The video fed both sides' claims. Those who sided with the Goys saw it as cold-blooded murder, while those supporting Spaide saw it as proof he'd been pushed too far. Neither side agreed about what the video truly meant. Jeffrey Spaide's obituary appeared in local newspapers and online sites. It described him as a loving son, brother, and uncle deeply missed by family and friends. It listed his military service, degrees, and professional career, mentioned his passion for running marathons, and talked about his close bond with his nephew. It did not mention the shooting or his role in it at all, portraying him as a devoted professional and family man. The difference between that obituary and what Spaide had done shocked many. How could someone be a loving family member and also kill 2 people in cold blood? How could a man with a respected military background and a 20-plus year career commit such violence? People struggled to reconcile those 2 sides of him. Funerals were held for all 3 who died. James and Lisa Goy were mourned by family, friends, and their neighborhood. Their son attended, surrounded by relatives who promised to support him through his loss. Jeffrey's funeral was more complicated. His family grieved for him, but also had to live with the fact he had taken 2 lives before his own. They mourned the brother and uncle they loved while facing his terrible choices. The surveillance video remained a source of controversy. Mental health experts warned that watching such graphic, violent footage could cause trauma. They urged people not to share or watch the video out of curiosity, saying each time it spread, it re-traumatized the Goy family. They emphasized that real people had died and real loved ones were hurting. Still, the video kept circulating on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and many other platforms. Some sites removed it for breaking rules, but others left it up. The video became one that people shared with a warning that it was very disturbing, yet many shared it anyway. The deaths of James and Lisa Goy turned into a spectacle watched by millions of strangers. For those living on West Bergh Street, life after the shooting was difficult. Their quiet street became infamous. Reporters came to interview neighbors. Curious visitors slowly drove by the homes where it happened. The street became a place known for a tragic crime, and residents found themselves living somewhere forever marked by that event. Eventually, the snow melted and spring arrived. Life went on for most people, but for the boy who lost both parents, the family grieving James and Lisa, and Jeffrey's relatives facing the reality of what he did, the impact was lasting. 3 lives ended on a cold morning over a fight that should have never gone beyond words. The senselessness of it haunted everyone involved,